So here's what I'm starting with, this 4-drawer melamine dresser. There are things I really like about it, the size, the face of it. However, I'm not fond of the hardware or the design that's on the front drawer. But looking down below, I do love the legs. So there's some pros and cons of this dresser. Let's start. Here's the fun part. I started by giving it a good cleaning on the inside and out with a TSP substitute and a large sponge. The key to giving it a really good cleaning again is wiping it down until the sponge comes clean and then making sure all the residue is rinsed off with clear water. A quick and easy way to rinse your furniture is to use an industrial spray bottle like the one I have with the TSP substitute and just fill it with clean water. The other bottle I have was in use, so I'm using this spray mister with clean water, and I just mist the whole dresser in clean water and give it a wipe down with a clean damp sponge. Once the outside is perfectly clean, I removed the drawers and made sure to clean the inside just as well. Once the dresser was totally clean, I went on to removing the hardware. Once I took the hardware off, it didn't actually look that bad to me. Maybe it'll be good on another piece or this piece, I'm not sure yet. But fun part is these decorative panels fell right off. As soon as I unscrewed the hardware, they just fell right off. So that was excellent. No additional work for me. Because I wasn't sure which hardware I was going to use on this piece or what type of hardware, I went ahead and filled in the old hardware holes with Bondo. Once my Bondo was 100% dry, which literally only takes about 10-12 minutes, I took out my Bosch orbital sander and an aggressive grit of 80, and I started sanding the Bondo down smooth. And I was very curious what type of wood was going to be underneath this finish. I had a new water-based Au Naturel gel stain that I wanted to try really badly, so I just kept on sanding down the drawers. My original plan was to sand down each and every drawer if there was a nice wood underneath to stain it in this natural-looking stain. The wood underneath was looking half decent, so then I took my palm sander and I used a 120 grit and went over getting the rest of the finish off and smoothing out that 80 grit. Unlike my last video with the lazy sanding where I wanted the antique look so it was not sanded down evenly, this time I wanted a perfectly even sand. To prep your wood for an even sand, you start at a very low grit, being 60 or 80, which is the rougher sandpaper, and you start working your way up to a higher grit. Again, I started with an 80 grit on my orbital sander. I went to a 120 grit on the palm sander, and then finally, to give it an extra smooth, perfect finish, I hand sanded with a 220 sanding pad. Now for the fun part. I have to admit I was pretty excited to try this product out. It's called Au Naturel Voodoo Gel Stain. It's a water-based stain, and I have a favorite in the Voodoo Gel Stain, which is called Tobacco Road, which I've used in plenty of my other makeovers and in the videos. And I'm always saying how that's one of my favorites. I think after trying this one may be one of my new favorites as well. This is amazing. So what I did to prep the drawers was I removed all the dust, and then I use a free natural wood conditioner, which is water. And all I do is I take a damp cloth and wet the top of the wood with the damp cloth, and or I use a spray water mister as I'm using here, and I spray the wood with some water and then remove the excess with a shop towel. Then I apply the water-based gel stain, and as you can see, check this out. I applied it with a foam brush. It went on beautifully. It looks pretty opaque as I'm putting it on, but just wait until I take this shop towel and I start wiping it back. I have to say, it removed all the ugly undertones of, not that this wood was ugly, don't get me wrong, but you know how wood often has yellow-orange undertones? And when you're looking at it, you think it looks just great, but just wait until you see the difference. Here I'm wiping it back with a shop towel just to get the excess off. And of course, if your shop towel is leaving any sort of lines, you want to go over that to get a smooth, uniform finish. So the more I'm wiping off, the more you start seeing the wood grain showing underneath. And check out the difference between this drawer that I'm working on and the bottom drawer in behind it. This is such a beautiful all-natural finish. It gives it a really clean, modern look with no orange or yellow undertones. I went ahead and repeated these steps on each and every drawer. A great little quick tip to keep your brushes clean and clean them very easily is with this scrubby. It smells amazing, and it's a natural soap infused scrubber that removes paint, oil, dirt, grease. It removes a bunch of crud. And I've actually been using them to clean out my foam brushes, to clean out my rollers, to clean out my bristle brushes. I've been using it to clean out my sink, to clean my hands. If I get paint on my floor, I've been using it on my floors. This soap is amazing. I've been using it for everything lately, and it works like a charm. So back to the dresser. The body of the dresser I wanted to paint. However, because this is such a slick surface, I did not want to sand this. I just took the lazy way out and used a bonding primer. So I applied the bonding primer all over the body, and then I applied a second coat about probably 3 hours later, and I left it overnight. And when I came back in the morning, I did a scratch test to make sure that this bonding primer was adhered to the dresser 100% before I started painting. I have a quick little video on how to perform a scratch test that I'll link in the cards above and in the description below. After it passed the scratch test, I gave it a really, really quick light sanding with a 220 grit sanding pad, just to knock anything down before I painted. Once it was sanded super smooth and I removed the dust, then it was time for the fun part, to paint. So I had the beautiful natural wood drawers, and I mixed up a custom color for my paint. I eyeballed this, but I used around 25% of salt water, all-in-one mineral paint, and then about 75% of Serenity, all-in-one mineral paint. And it came out this beautiful blue with these mild green undertones. It's such a beautiful spring color. As I mentioned in another video, if I'm working on furniture that's light enough to flip on its top, I do, because then when I'm painting, I can get the hole underneath and I can get spots that I wouldn't have easy access to if it was standing on its feet. This is such a great tip, especially if you sell your furniture, because I remember when I first started painting furniture, somebody would come to buy, pick it up. We would be putting it into the car, and I would notice these little tiny spots that I missed, or I would notice some paint that got somewheres where it wasn't supposed to. This takes care of all that. You will have a pristine, gorgeous looking paint job on the top, bottom, and all the nooks and crannies. So it's a great thing to do so you can see the entire piece you're painting. This works for whether you're painting by brush and or whether you're spray painting. And if you're ever painting spindles or round furniture legs, anything that's has a circumference to it, and you don't want any brush marks, use the slap it on technique. I love my slap it on technique. And it's so fun to do. So you just take your brush and you slap the paint on. It looks really odd, but it works wonderfully. I have a full video on this painting technique that, again, I'll add up in the cards above, and I'll also add in the description down below. And check out this color. Isn't it beautiful? It's just a beautiful custom color. So lovely. I would love to use it again. So I'm going to put it in my blog, and I can always refer back to it when need be. To paint the top of the stained drawers, I used a very, very light touch with a dry brush because I didn't want any of the paint getting on the natural stain. So as you can see here, I'm actually angling my brush. I'm going in so the brush touches the back of the drawer first and then lightly feathering it to the front of the drawer on an angle. This way it keeps the front super clean. Here's another quick tip. If you do get paint on areas that you don't want it, while your paint is still wet, you can take a sanding sponge and wet it underwater. Give it a good squeeze to get the majority of the water out. And using this damp sanding sponge, start sanding the area where you made your little oops. No sanding dust will get into your paint because you're sanding with a wet or damp sanding sponge, so you don't have to worry about that. And of course, when the paint is more fresh, even if it's partially dry, it's easier to get off than once it's totally dry. So this is a great little way to keep your pieces really clean if you make little oops mistakes and you want to get the excess paint off while your paint is still wet. You don't even have to wait until it dries. So the body took 2 coats of paint for full coverage, which was fantastic. But as I stood back and looked at the piece, I thought I wanted some color on the bottom. So I removed the 2 bottom drawers and went ahead and painted them in the custom blue as well. Because this silk paint is an all-in-one, meaning it has a primer and a top coat already included, I did not need any bonding primer and I did not need to sand again because these drawers had already been sanded down to raw wood and then stained. I decided to go ahead and use the original hardware because once it was off the piece, and it looked okay to me. It's funny because when I first looked at it, I really did not like it. But then once it came off the piece and I thought, oh, okay, in a different color, this is going to be cute. So I went ahead and I spray painted it outside in a spray paint called Champagne, but it wasn't quite gold enough for me. So I ended up using a gemstone mousse over that, and that turned out perfect. It's a really nice, rich gold, and I actually did the feet in the same gemstone mousse as well. Because I had filled the original hardware holes with Bondo, I had to drill them back out. And this happens to me quite often, actually. It's like Murphy's Law. If I don't fill the old hardware holes, I end up finding hardware that doesn't match. And if I do fill the hardware holes, then oftentimes I'm re-drilling the hardware holes exactly where they were. But that's just fine. I mean, it doesn't take me long to fill them. And at least once they're filled, I have the option of using original hardware and or brand new hardware. So here I am re-drilling the Bondo out of the original hardware holes. And you can either do this from the front and or the back of your piece. I mean, it's plain as day as where the holes were and where the Bondo is in the back of the drawer. So I often just go in from behind and drill them out. For the finishing touch, I flipped the dresser onto its top once again, and I measured 6 centimeters on each leg and marked it off with a pencil. Once my measurements were marked off, I used green painter's tape and followed the line around. And then I used the gold gemstone mousse and the slap it on technique, and I painted the gold bottoms. This really tied in with the handles. It looked fantastic, paired up with the blue, the spring blue, and the Au Naturel drawers up top. I think everything came together really nicely. So here's the thrift dresser I started with. Here's the before. And here's the after. Isn't it a sweet spring looking piece? I think this came together so beautifully. And I can't wait to hear what you think of this makeover. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I cannot wait to hear what you think. So feel free to leave a comment down below. If you've gotten any value out of the video, please give it a thumbs up and a like. And be sure to subscribe before you leave and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also follow me over at salvagedinspirations.com, where I have over 500 furniture painting tutorials teaching you how to make your furniture beautiful. I also have DIY projects and this is to help you stage and style your painted furniture and decorate your home. So until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye guys.